Hey guys, so as you can tell from the title, this is the video where I'm going to talk about my dad's death and how it affected me and just kind of talk about it. And some of you have expressed that you want to hear about it, and I don't know if that's maybe because you have lost a loved one or just have a general interest in how people cope with death. I'm no expert, certainly, but talking about things and sharing them helps me. And from what feedback I've gotten from you guys, it helps you too. And that's not just sharing in this case, it's sharing in my whole life, as I've done since 2009 here on YouTube. And so, yeah, I don't want to do a bunch of editing and cutting out me crying, because I'm gonna cry, as you might cry watching it too. But tears can be cathartic and a good thing. So I'm just gonna let it roll, and we'll go from there. So today is April 21st, and my dad died on December 23rd. What had been leading up to it in September, late September, he had discovered a diabetic wound on his foot. And he had diabetes for many years. He had his first heart attack in 2005, but he had had heart problems before that, and was diagnosed with diabetes in 2005 also when he was in the hospital, but had probably had it for quite a long time before that. And it's hard to know where to even begin. So in September, he found the diabetic ulcer, and he had had neuropathy in his feet for a long time, so he couldn't really feel it, and only discovered it because the sock had been sticking to the bottom of his foot. So he went to urgent care, and they sent him to wound care, but they didn't actually schedule him until I think 4 or 5 days. And so that's number one. It could have been handled differently. It's nothing against doctors or the medical community, but in hindsight and in talking to his primary care doctor, he should have been hospitalized right away, because what happens with diabetics is wounds can take a turn for the worst very fast, and that's what happened. So by the second week of October, he'd been going to wound care. It wasn't really getting any better. By the second week of October, he went to the wound care appointment, and they said, you need to go to the emergency room and be admitted. And so he did that, and they did a surgery and removed a portion of his foot, and it didn't really help. Long story short, October 15th, his leg was amputated below the knee. And that was a really tough day. The word amputation at that time to me was such a strong word that the idea of going from having a wound on your foot to amputation felt so extreme, and brought up just so many feelings and fear. And so during that time, did a lot more research and realized amputations were, they'd come a long way and were more common than I realized. So we tried to really change the perspective and try to see it in a positive, as positive as you can. So he was in the hospital for 2 weeks, and then he got released and went to an inpatient rehab and was doing physical therapy, and he come such a long way, and I was really, really proud of him. And then he got to go home mid-November, and they had changed a lot of his medications, different treatment teams, and so his medication had changed a lot. And when he got home, he was having a hard time breathing, and he had quite a lot of fluid on his lungs, so he was admitted to the hospital, I think just for 1 or 2 nights, and got sent home again. And he he saw his cardiologist, I want to say like 10 days before he died, and they said, your levels are really low, but don't worry. So his heart function was down to 20%, but it had been there before, and then it builds back up. And so at that appointment, they said, your heart function has gone down, but it'll go back up again. You're doing great. You're doing physical therapy. They were actually working towards getting him a prosthetic leg. So you have to form the leg into a cone shape, and there's different binders and things that they use, and that was going well. And things were looking positive, and I think we all felt that way. So a week before he died, it was on a Wednesday, we had talked, well, prior to that, we had talked about doing family pictures. And when we were in our, well, when I was in my mid-20s, I don't know, there was a series of time where we did family pictures every Christmas time. And then we kind of stopped. And so we had always meant to get back to doing that and just hadn't got around to it. And so this time he's like, I really want to do family pictures. And so a week before he died, we went to JCPenney's and got family pictures. And he was in his wheelchair. He had an electric wheelchair. And we did these great, they turned out great. It was kind of rushed. And, at one point my brother said, well, maybe we just shouldn't do it. And at that point, myself and his daughter, my niece, were already there. And because her and I had went shopping, and I was like, we're already here. Dad's on the way. Just, we're doing it. And so we did. And Daniel had gotten off work like right at that time. And so, but we did it, and we got him done. And I was really happy that we did that. And especially after he died, the fact that we got pictures 1 week to the day. So those were really special. I'm really glad we have those. And then the night before he died, he owned a company, and he really enjoyed doing a Christmas party every year. And we would do kind of a gift exchange, but my dad would buy all the gifts. And after his leg amputation and medical problems, my dad and my brother and I sat down, and we kind of talked about the future of the company and what, Christmas party. Do we do it? Do we not do it? And I voted to not do it. I said, you've been through a lot. You're really tired. And I think maybe you should just take this one off and do it again next year. And Jamie voted, well, the guys work really hard. I think we should do something for them. And that's what we ended up doing. And the three of us actually went shopping for all the presents, and then I wrapped all the presents, and it was just kind of a team effort. Dan helped to get all the presents to the restaurant. And so that was a Tuesday night. So he died on Wednesday. That was the Tuesday night before. And it went great. He was in a good mood. And I don't know, you look at it in hindsight, and I think, were there any clues? Were there something I should have seen? But he didn't show any symptoms of being in any struggles, Um, so when it was over, we were the last to leave, and um, there was a lift on the back of his SUV, and so the way to transfer him in the car was to get his wheelchair up to the side door, and then not a cane, walker to push up on, and then he would get in the car, and then whoever would roll his wheelchair back in and secure it, and so he got in the car, and Edith had rolled the wheelchair back and was securing it, and I came to the side of the door. You know, his car door was open, and so my brother and him and I got to stand there and have a little check-in of how we thought the party went, and all three of us thought it went really well, and we felt great. And you know, so we said goodbye, and I love you, and I'll see you soon, because it was right before Christmas. So we were supposed to go over there Christmas Eve for dinner, and the next day I was only doing a half day that day, and originally I was going to work 8 to 12, and I had dinner plans with my girlfriends at 6. And so rather than get off at 12 and then have a bunch of time to kill, I switched it and was going to work 12 to 4. Or, yeah, no, 1 to 5, something like that. And so the next morning, I get up early, always, so I was up early, and I was baking cookies for the holidays, and I missed a call from my brother, and I think it was at 8:17 or something. And I call him right back, and he says, so my dad's my neighbor, or was, just a few houses down. So he called me back, and he said, Edith just called me, and I think you need to go down there. And I said, well, what happened? He's like, I think you just need to go down there. And then I heard the sirens. So I had like my house clothes on. I didn't even have a bra on, and so I did turn off the oven. No, excuse me. I pulled out the cookies. I didn't turn off the oven. I pulled out the cookies. I threw my jacket on, and then I set the phone down and ran out of the house. I didn't even lock it or grab my keys. I just went into like the oh no zone. And I think my thought is that the ambulance is going to take him away, and then I'm going to come back and put on real clothes and probably follow him to the hospital. And so I ran down there, and the paramedics there were like, I think 2 or 3 between ambulance and fire truck. And they were kind of walking out and just had these like sad looks on their faces. And in my mind, I just got angry, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you better hurry up. And in my mind, so I didn't say this out loud. And I was just thinking, get him out of here, take him to the hospital. And I walk in, and Edith comes up to me and says he passed. And I mean, my first instinct was like, not believing it. And I'm sure that's part of shock or whatever you go through. But I was like, what? And she's like, he passed away. And her daughter-in-law was there, and you know, she kind of agreed. You know, I mean, whatever you do in that moment, I mean, it's just, you're not in your right mind. And so Sarah was like, you know, yeah, he's gone. And I just stood there just in shock. And I didn't have my cell phone, and my first instinct was to call, I can't remember if I called Jamie or Daniel first. Regardless, I called both. But I called my brother, and said, are you on your way? And he said, yeah. And I think he knew. And I called Daniel. Now, I was using Edith's phone, so Daniel didn't recognize the number. And so when he answered, and there was this tiny, tiny window that I actually got a hold of him because he was supposed to start work like at 9, I think. And so he answered the phone, and I just was hysterical. And he said afterwards, he said he didn't know who it was because he didn't recognize the number. And then in the more I was talking, realized it was me. So I said, please, please come home. Please, and so he was able to leave work and come home. And so I went back to my house and put on clothes and locked up and turned off the oven, and then went back. And when I got back, my brother was there. And we just sat there and cried and held each other. And I mean, there's so many feelings that come up, feelings of shock, feeling of what happens now, fear of the future, sadness that you miss this person or you're gonna miss this person. And that's something that I've struggled with a lot. Of all the things I won't have with my dad, I won't be able to do this or that. He's never gonna hold my child. He's not gonna walk me down the aisle. I mean, I had all these thoughts. So we sat there for a little while, and then we decided to go in and see him. He had passed away in his sleep, very peacefully, just kind of on his side. And I had never seen or touched a person that had died. And, thinking before this had happened, had you asked me if I would want to see him, I probably would have said no. But in that moment, I wanted to hold on to just hold on to something. So I sat by him on the bed and just talked to him a little bit. And just sat there in his room with him. And I'm so thankful that he did pass away in sleep and not at the hospital, which was his fear. Or being in public where people would see him. I think that was also a fear that he had, as I think we all do. So we sat there for a long time, then we went back out, and the process is they call the sheriff's department, who comes out and does a report, and then once they're done with their report, then you call the funeral home. And so Dan came, and we kind of sat, I'm gonna turn this off, we kind of sat there for a long time. And it's like I didn't want to, I kept going between being in there with him or sitting on the couch. Like, I didn't want to take that room out of my sight. And it's a strange thing when you go through those kinds of emotions of what comes out. And I just didn't want to let him go, is what it was. So sheriff's department did their report. And then so the funeral home came and got him, and Dan and I went outside, and I just wanted to see him go, being wheeled out, and Edith came out too, and uh, right before, because we knew they were getting close, and so right before it was time, I went back in and kind of sat there with him and just kind of cried, and just said my fears out loud of what am I going to do without you. And so that was the 23rd. So the next day was Christmas Eve, and we had planned on going there to their house. And we talked about, do we still have dinner or do we not? And I said, I just can't imagine being here in the home without him sitting at that table. And I think everybody kind of felt that way too. So Christmas Eve, we ended up going to Daniel's folks' house, and that was nice, and they were so nice to me, knowing what had just gone on. And I guess feelings after where do you even start? Well, so here's something. He had wanted to be cremated, and he had talked about wanting to have his ashes spread at the coast and the Oregon coast. And so before he died, he'd actually talked to us about this, my brother and I. And, we said, okay, whatever you want to do. And then, so we got him cremated. I have a necklace that they have jewelry now that you can put ashes in. And so I have a necklace that has his ashes in it. And anyway, we got the urns with the ashes, and they're here at my house. And we haven't done anything with them yet. Again, prior to this, I wouldn't have thought anything about spreading the ashes. I mean, that's what he wanted. I as far as my belief system, I don't believe his soul is in those ashes, but they are a valid part of him that I, at this time, don't feel comfortable, spreading. And my brother and I have talked about it, and so I don't know and I've kind of talked to Dan about it too. I don't know if maybe we'll get like a special urn just to keep here or what. But it's still so new, I think, is part of it too. I might feel differently in 6 months or a year. So I'd gotten engaged a month, so November 28th, a month to him prior to him dying. And that was one of my first thoughts, was that he's not going to be there to walk me down the aisle. And in fact, when he was going through the amputation and talking about prosthetic legs, and when he would get tired or start to say, oh, I don't think the leg's going to happen, I would say, Dad, you need to work towards it, because you need to walk me down the aisle. And of course he could have wheeled me down the aisle. We talked about putting me on a skateboard. You know what I mean? There are ways to do it, of course, but I wanted that to be a motivation for him. to work towards that prosthetic leg because it would have really helped his mobility and given him some independence back. One thing that he used to love to do was drive, and he hadn't been able to drive. So when he died, I asked my brother if he would walk me down the aisle, and he said yes. And even at the wedding, I tried not to think about it too much, because I didn't want to be broken up about it. I know my dad would want me happy and not crying all the time about his death. So my brother did walk me down the aisle, and I have a bracelet that I bought on Etsy, and I'll just put a picture of it. So I did wear the bracelet, and I've worn it a few times even after the wedding. It's hard to wear bracelets at my job because I type all day, but sometimes while I'm out and about, I'll wear it. And his birthday was on Friday, the 15th, and we went to breakfast, my mom and my aunt and my uncle and I, and it was nice just to be together, because that's something he would have potentially gone to, is a family breakfast. And it wasn't necessarily planned as a birthday celebration, but it kind of just turned out that way. And I think, as hard as it is to say, I think he kind of knew that he was dying. And he had gone through so many medical things and survived that I thought he would do that here too. In my heart, I really thought that. And I feel selfish sometimes for thinking that. Because I want him here. I don't. So, after he died, I talked to my uncle on the phone, and just checking in. He'd already known. I think my brother had called him, and in talking, he said, "Well, I want you to know your dad gave me something for you for your wedding." And I'm not sure at what point he did that. I've never asked. But just the fact that he thought about it, and that he thought he might not be there, I just really appreciate the sentiment, and that he was thinking of me. And I know he just wanted me to be happy. And I am happy. And in thinking about it, there's so many factors. The fact that I got engaged a month before, we had family pictures a week before, we had the company party the night before, and I think he just felt at peace, I guess. So it's now April, and between Daniel and I, we've had so many major life changes this in the last 6 months that I'm just looking forward to settling down. I know I've said that before in a past video, or if you know me in real life, I say it all the time because it's just been a roller coaster. And thank God that Daniel is here and was there. I don't think I could have gone through it without him. And I'm thankful I have a sibling and who was going through similar things and we relate to each other in how we were raised and the type of person our father was, and um, and working together and going through his things and working on his estate. I went through my dad's things, some of his things yesterday and today, or excuse me, yesterday and the day before. And that brings up feelings too, because one thing I didn't want to do and don't want to do after someone dies is to make them into this perfect angelic person. He was not perfect, and nor am I, nor are any of us. And anyway. So I was having feelings while going through his things of, so long story short, he had a hard time throwing things away. So I came across a box of phone books from 2003. Just one sample of one box that he has. And it's like, why? But then again, he saved every card and letter he's ever had. So I also came across a box of love letters from him and my mom. And they were together as teenagers up until I turned 20, and they got divorced around that time. So they were together for many, many years. And so he saved those. He had a whole other box of cards and letters from various family members, a birthday card from my uncle to him. And he was a very sentimental man, and so I saved those boxes. I wasn't ready to go through those. My great-grandmother died when I was 12, and there were cards from her, so seeing her handwriting was nice, and I miss her a lot too. That's the only other major person that has passed away in my life. As far as family goes, sorry, it's not very attractive to blow your nose. So emotionally, it's been an interesting ride. I also have these moments where I'm really happy and I feel thankful that I was closer to him as an adult than I probably was as a kid, because he was a small business owner and worked 7 days a week, and when he was home, he wasn't really there either. I mean, when you have a high stress job, you have to have some sort of downtime, and his downtime wasn't rolling around playing with us. It was, for him, watching TV and playing with his hobbies and just wanting some quiet time. And but as adults, we became closer, and he saved the day a lot of times for me and helped me financially and otherwise. And So I have a lot of good memories, and I'm not really open to feeling his presence or searching for that right now because it just feels too real. Like I don't think I want to feel him, like, as far as like a ghost or feel his presence around me, because I don't want to really deal with the fact that I'm never going to see him again. So, in grief, they talk about different levels of grief or different waves of grief. And like I said, I go through happy times and I go through really sad times. And I know he wouldn't want me to be putting my life on hold to cry about missing him. But I do sometimes. And I'm really thankful that he got to meet Daniel. And uh, Daniel's dad actually stopped by the business on a day that my dad was there. And after the amputation, he really wasn't there much. I mean, he really wasn't there a whole lot towards the end because he didn't really need to be. So he would just kind of stop in here and there. And I think Daniel's dad saw the car, the SUV that had the lift on the back. Or I don't know why. I don't know. I've never talked to Don about it, other than I think it was just fate or whatever we want to call it. But so Dan's dad had stopped by and introduced himself, and they talked for a little bit, and then he died shortly after. I'm not sure how many weeks after. It wasn't very long. And my dad had said that he had met Don, and very nice man, and they had a good chat. And when he died and when we had his funeral, Daniel's dad, came and dressed in a suit and was very nice and paid his respects, which I truly appreciate. And Daniel's mom, in fact, came as well, and she came down from Portland. And I feel really blessed that I have such a great new family. And I like that, not that Dan's dad is a replacement for my dad, but sometimes when I hug him, he's about the same height. And it makes me think of my dad. We had a memorial service in January, and that went really well. We saw a lot of people in the community. Being a small business owner, he knew a lot of people, and so we had it at a Elks Lodge, and I made a video slideshow, and it was just nice. People got up at the end and talked about him and different stories, and so funny thing is, on his birthday on Friday, my mom and my aunt and I had went to Portland for the day, and then they left me in Portland to meet up with Dan, and then they came back home and stopped by the business, and we watched it on the video cameras, and my mom was standing there, and there was a tire a stack of tires by the door, and three stacked horizontally and then one stacked vertically. And that tire just rolled right off and bumped her in the foot. And there's no gust of wind, there was no earthquake, there was nothing. It was just on the camera. You can see she's standing there talking, and the tire just rolls off and just bumps right into her. So, we talked about maybe that was dad trying to various things. That was dad trying to get her out of his shop. That was dad trying to say hello, or who knows what. I mean, make up what you will of that. But it was pretty crazy that nothing bumped it. It would just, and there's a dip in tires, so it's not even like it was a flat surface and fell off. It had to kind of like, you know, anyways. So things like that make me kind of chuckle and make it a little bit more lighthearted. And and then I just keep going back to, I'm thankful for the life I have, and I'm thankful for the opportunities that my dad provided me. And I see a lot of characteristics of myself that were his, and some of the negative ones too. I have to kind of stop myself and not be cranky or whatever the scenario is. Yeah, I'm thankful for friends, and thankful for my spouse, and it's nice to be able to share, to openly share, and people are understanding that when I'm having a down moment, I share it. I try really hard not to stuff it down, because that's where I get into trouble. Because if I stuff down feelings too much, then I react and overeat, or want to drink wine or something. And I mean, drinking wine's okay, but I don't ever want it to get to a point where I'm drinking to stuff down feelings. So but yeah, I've just tried, as far as how I'm coping, I've tried to not second guess my feelings, or try to stop them, or shame myself for having them. I just recognize I'm feeling a moment right now. And I think there's a lesson there in the future, when I do get pregnant, or I'm sure that's going to bring up a whole lot of emotions. And even in the past, when I had all my surgeries, I would be going along, and all of a sudden I would just well up and want to cry. And not even about anything specific, just feeling feelings. So I think breathing through them, acknowledging them, and recognizing I just feel like crying right now is a good thing. And it happens to me a lot when I'm driving. For whatever reason, but driving is actually when I had the thought of the surprise wedding as well. And that's when I stopped wherever I was going, I called Dan and kind of talked to him about it. But so I'm trying to think if there's anything else to bring up. Like I said, it feels exhausting, but it feels good to talk about it. And my hope is that by talking about it, you guys can get something from it too. I had this incredible fear of my dad dying, and it was almost a debilitating fear, especially before I met Dan. And I just always thought I wouldn't ever be able to handle it. And I did. I handled it. And this has been the hardest 6 months of my life, and the most amazing 6 months of my life. And when I get stressed out, I am reminded of the positives And that's what gets you through, as corny as that sounds. But you just got to hold on to that. So I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you so much for watching. And thank you for all your love and support. Every comment you guys leave, I appreciate it so much. And I do read them, even though I don't really get a chance to respond. I'm usually just kind of reading them quickly on my phone. I really, really, really appreciate it, and appreciate you guys for sticking by me. So, thank you, and I'll talk to you soon.